Well, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Scoop Phase. Does that work? Is that a good theme song?
I'll just punch you in the face.
I guess we're still looking for a theme song. We need a theme song, guys. How about
How about you're so gay?
And you don't even like boys. Boom. Probably the only one who knows that song. Unless you like Katy Perry. Okay, we can stop now. Anyway, new spoilers, guys.
So much.
They are certainly some interesting ones. We're going to go with the first one that's actually on here. It is the new Grand Architect. It's 1 in a blue for a 1/3 Vidalcan Artificer. His name is Chief Engineer. Artifact spells you cast have Convoke. It's a very powerful ability. Though in Standard, we normally don't have artifacts that are worth abusing in a deck like that. We do have Ornithopter, which is neat. It definitely would lend itself to a deck like that. Springleaf Drum and Ornithopter on turn 1, make another mana, play something else. It's pretty good. So we don't know if there's really going to be anything worth convoking into play with this ability. Hold on, guys. I had to close my door. So we don't know if there's anything worth convoking into play with this ability. But it might be very potent, especially if we get a card like Mindslaver or Spine of Ishsha back in Standard. We have Trading Post now, but that doesn't really make a whole deck. So we could be looking for just some neat artifact cards coming up that could really use being made cheaper, and in a deck with a bunch of cheap, efficient creatures, just for the convocability on this guy, with things like Springleaf Drum, like Ornithopter. If we get Memnite back, then we'd have Memnite, we'd have 2/0 drops. Drinking some water here, guys. Omen Speaker doesn't seem terrible in a deck like this. Scrying 2 and then blocking once or twice could be very good. It just seems kind of like some weird artifact control deck. Though, of course, this does require them to print something worth winning with in artifact form in Standard. So we'll see if that happens. Hopefully we'll get a Staff of Nin reprint, because I love that card. But I can't really play it in a ton of constructed formats outside of EDH, so just really miss that card in Standard. The next one, me and Kosaki number 2 have a little argument on this. It's Jake's Living Guild-Pack, so I'll wait for him to get back. But we can talk about Hushwing Gryff. Yeah, Hushwing Gryff. It is a 2 and a white, 2/1 flying flash hippogriff. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. I don't know how relevant that will be in Standard. A lot of people see this thing play in Modern and maybe Legacy in the Hate Bears deck. I don't really think you could see a home there, because that deck already has a few 3-drops with Aether Vial, which allows them to cheat it in. But in several other decks, like Zoo, like Small Zoo specifically, they can't really afford to play this card, because it's 2 and a white, and it's a creature that dies to things like Electrolyze or any other removal spell. And if you're bringing Torpor in that deck, it's to shut down things that, like the, what is it? Melira Pod. And they could just pod it into, well, Murderous Redcap wouldn't kill it, but they have a ton of things that could just kill a Hushwing Gryff. It can't block anything in the Melira Pod deck, so it'd just kind of be sitting there. So you'd rather just have a Torpor Orb anyway. It might be able to get in for some flying damage if they don't have access to 4 mana, because then they could just flash in a Restoration Angel and kill it. It seems really not better than Torpor Orb in a lot of decks, but in a deck that plays Aether Vial, you could definitely use this, as you could be tapped out and just sneak this in with Aether Vial. So the Hate Bears decks, maybe... No, Eternal Command couldn't play this because they need their cards to enter the battlefield and do things. So pretty much just the Hate Bears deck. Maybe some weird Aether Vial beatdown deck that's not Merfolk. Or Hate Bears could play this card. But I don't really see it finding a home in something like a Zoo sideboard, because 3 mana is a lot in a deck like Small Zoo, so you'd rather just have a Torpor Orb. It's a lot harder to answer from that sideboard. As I said, that's why I like Torpor Orb, because I'm playing Small Zoo in Modern right now. I'll take Torpor Orb over this, but this definitely has potential homes in Modern. And then the one right after that is Constricting Sliver. And I'm just wondering where Kosaki number 2 is, because he just doesn't seem to want to come back. You got a text message. I am responding. Voodoo texting people. Okay. Anyway, oh, I hear him come back. Anyway, Constricting Sliver. It is 5 and a white for a 3/3 Sliver. Whenever a Sliver enters the battle, is it say Sliver? Sliver creatures you control. It's very important. It says Sliver creatures you control. You didn't bring me any pizza. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It gives Sliver creatures you control, when they enter the battlefield, you banish or pre something, which is you exile a target creature until this card leaves the battlefield. So that's a very powerful ability, especially with like the weird Sliver land that spits out 1/1 slivers every turn for 5 mana. Like that with this, when you have nothing really to do with your mana, no creatures to play. I don't know what else the Slivers deck would do other than just play more dudes anyway. So like giving
Play Overrun.
like this is a play Overrun. Good point. This is definitely a very powerful card in like the Slivers deck where you have the Mana Whiff Sliver that makes all your Slivers mana dorks. In a casual Slivers deck with like Gemstone Sliver or Gemhide Sliver, whatever, it's a Mana Whiff Sliver, but only for Slivers you control. That's a very powerful ability against a lot of creature decks, which it really looks like Wizards wants to push creature decks for some reason, like a little more than usual in this core set. But we can't do that because Supreme Verdict's in Standard. So
For the moment.
I'm just pretty much excited for a lot of these new cards, not excited for Standard until rotation happens. I feel like that's a lot of people's opinions. But since you're back, we can talk about Jace, the Living Guild Pact. He's 4 mana, 2 and double blue, for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. +1. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your graveyard. -3. You return target non-land permanent owner's hand. -8. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library. You draw 7 cards. So let's start with the +1. I like it. What do you think?
I don't like it that much.
Me and Kosaka number 2 have very different opinions. I think this guy can see lots of play. Well, not lots of play. Play is a one of. After rotation, he could probably see a little more play in Standard because he won't be competing with Jace Architect of Thought, and there's not really a graveyard-based deck in Standard right now, other outside of Dredge and Reanimator, but those are not blue decks, so they wouldn't really want this card anyway. Maybe some kind of weird, like Self-Mill Psychic Spiral deck could want this card. I've tried to play that deck a couple times. I just never ended up liking it because you pretty much had to play a Turbo Fog deck, but there's nothing really to interact with your graveyard once your cards get milled. So, Dictator Kruvix isn't... It's really slow. So, unless you can really kill your opponent quickly, it's not very amazing. But I definitely like him. Since he comes down at 5 and goes up to 6, he can soak up a lot of damage if your opponent decides that he needs to be answered immediately. Because if he does get to ultimate, and you've played something like you go Supreme Verdict and then you ultimate, the game's pretty much over at that point. Or even if you just go ultimate and then Supreme Verdict, the game's probably still over at that point. Because now your opponent has no hand, their graveyard's not a resource, and you just killed everything on the board. So that's definitely very nice. And his -3 is just kind of useful. Maybe there's if like Dharma Raids can play, if there's a Planeswalker about to ultimate that you just can't kill, you can bounce it back to their hand. Advent of the Worm, if that starts picking up play, you just bounce the token. Voice Resurgence tokens go away. If you go Supreme Verdict and then you just bounce the token. Like, he has a lot of utility. And sometimes there are things that just got through a counter spell, or maybe it can even bounce Banishing Lights and Detention Spheres for a turn. I can bounce Stormwrath Dragons. Seems bad though, because they come back down with haste. Only if you have a counterspell. But he definitely has some nice utility there. And then his ultimate's just kind of cool. Not the most relevant, but it might come into play at one point. And then Lightning Strike. That was one of the other new spoilers. I don't understand why that's getting reprinted, because it doesn't affect its Lightning Strike. Why they couldn't just like print something that only don't damage creatures or something instead of just reprinting Lightning Strike. I mean, I understand it's fine. It's not that big a deal. But now we just have like a literal exact copy of Lightning Strike, because it is just Lightning Strike in the core set, which is weird. There were some other spoilers we didn't get to cover yet. I'm going to start with the actual spell and not the lands that have been spoiled yet. Life's Legacy. This is a Momentous Fall, but for 2 mana. And it's a sorcery. This is as an additional cost this card, sacrifice creature. Draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, which is really it's very potent.
You know what you did
I don't know, like maybe the green black dredge deck could play this. You sacrifice your Bane of Heroes or whatever the thing is. The green 5/5. The dredge staple thing. Like it's green. It's 2 colorless green for a 5/5, or like 4 colorless green for a 5/5. With monstrous, it gets 1 cheaper for each creature in graveyard. Like being able to play that guy out super cheap and then sacrifice him to draw 5 cards if you don't think he's going to be very good. Like that seems really good. Maybe it can find a home in that deck. Sacrificing things that have a Night Howler bestowed on them to draw a bunch of cards and then attack with your Night Howler also seems really good.
You know, you didn't even talk about Jace that much. His
Well,
bad
there wasn't
version of the
too
Mind
much
Sculpt.
Whoa! What
What?
just happened to your iPad? It like backed up without me doing anything, which was weird. There's a few more spells on this page because I talked about Avacyn, Resurrection Invoker, and Perilous Vault, but Preeminent Captain, Preeminent Captain. He's a 2 and a white, 2/2 first strike Kithkin soldier. Whenever he attacks, you may put a soldier creature card from your hand into play, tapped and attacking. That's a very potent ability, being able to cheat creatures into play, tapped and attacking. The only real question is there really anything worth cheating into play with that? Putting another one of him in would be good. He's a 2/2 first strike for 3, so he's very good against decks like mono red and mono blue. Being so cheap and so efficient for his mana. Being able to cheat things like Precinct Captain to play might be really cool. Soldier of the Pantheon. Daring Skyjack. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of soldiers in Standard, but that normally Tribal doesn't really come into play outside of Slivers in Standard, so hey, it looks like they're bringing some Tribal cards back, which is interesting. We did get a really neat spell, in my opinion. 2 red instant. With Convoke, it deals 4 damage to a creature or player. That's going to be very powerful limited, because it's a removal spell that gets cheaper. This could see play in the burn deck. I'm not really sure. I'm not too familiar with the standard burn deck. How many creatures are in their deck? I know they play Eidolon the Great Revel.
I play with Young Pyromancer.
Like if it's playing Young Pyromancer, then this definitely would seem good with the Young Pyromancer in the deck, because you could make it potentially 0 mana 4 damage. That's pretty good. Or even if this is 3 mana 4 damage. Like here's the worst case scenario for this card. It's a Warlord's Helix that doesn't gain life, so it seems perfectly fine in the deck with Young Pyromancer.
It only costs 6, right?
Costs 2 and 2 red.
What, for 4 damage?
For 4 damage to a creature or player.
Isn't that so big?
Yep. You need to listen better.
I did 6.
We got our dual land cycle. They're named Pain Lands. They've been around for a long time. They've been printed tons of times. They will basically tap to add a colorless, tap, and then tap, add 1 of 2 colors. These are the enemy colored ones. They're blue-red, green-black, blue-green, red-white, and white-black. It'll add a colored mana, but you take a damage. So it's kind of like a Mana Confluence, except for a 2-color deck. So these are very good in aggressive style decks. Control deck wouldn't really want these. There's just this, like, the 2-color aggressive decks could really use these over temples, because they've never really wanted temples. These can tap for colorless, so they won't always hurt you like Mana Confluence will. So you can play them alongside Mana Confluence, like a 4 and 2 split, 2 Mana Confluence for these, and like 2 or 3 color aggressive decks. The control decks probably won't want these over temples, just because they're slower. They don't really need to have their lands come in untapped all the time, so they can afford to play temples. And they would probably rather play this over Mana Confluence if they're like just the blue-white control deck, because it can tap for colorless still, so it won't hurt them. And then we got Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. It's a legendary land. It will enter untapped. Each land is a swamp in addition to its other type. Basically, this allows all lands in play to tap to add 1 black mana. It just adds that ability on there because they're now swamps. If Swamp Walk is on a relevant creature, that would be good. It's mainly a really good mana fixer. It can allow your Pain Lands and Mana Confluences to tap for mana as well without having to hurt you, which is really neat. But I don't really see it seeing a ton of play, or at least with what we've seen so far, like a ton of applicability in Standard. It'd be really neat. This is probably going in the mono black deck as a 1 or 2 of, simply because the opportunity cost is, it's free, it's a mono black deck. It just allows their Mutavaults to cast their Night Veil Specters, cast their Pack Rats if they don't have enough color mana symbols. It just allows them to cast their
does
double
keep a
black
double
and
mutable
triple
at
black
hand.
spells. Yeah, it does. It allows them to keep a double mutable at hand. So unless like something like Ghost Quarter gets printed, this card could definitely just go into the mono black deck as a 2-of without them even having to worry about it. We've already talked about a lot of the spoilers that I'm looking at right now. Here is an interesting one though. There's not a ton of interesting spoilers left, so we'll just go over some of the cool uncommons. 5 and a red. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control each creature on the battlefield with the greatest power, gain control of target creature an opponent controls until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Seems oddly wordy for a core set card.
What was it?
The 6-mana enchantment.
The beginning of your turn.
You act with treason. It seems weirdly weird for like a core set. Like to me, that seems like it confused some of the newer players. It basically reads: if all of your creatures are stronger than any opponent's creatures, you get to take a creature and attack them with it. At 6 mana, that's extremely highly cost intensive. But even though it's a powerful ability, if you see this in limited and you're drafting like some kind of ramp deck, definitely take this. But it doesn't really have a ton of places it could go in. It's not good in aggressive decks at 6 mana. A lot of the mid-range decks have just much more high impact cards at 6 mana. Maybe if this was 4 mana, it would see play. But it's not, in my opinion, very playable at 6 mana. There's another interesting card, Endless Obedience, which is 4 black sorcery with Convoke. You put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, so you get to reanimate any creature in anyone's graveyard. For at worst, 6 mana, so 1 more mana than something like Umbura Rites or Rise from the Grave or Obstinate Aid. And best case scenario, you can play this for free, which is probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to have 6 creatures, but it's not uncommon for this thing to cast 3 to 4 to 5 mana most of the time. Probably 3 or 4 most of the time in limited. It might see constructed play. I think it's see play in EDH, probably not in like standard or modern or anything, but definitely a very good card to be on the lookout for if you're in a limited event to try and draft or something. There was also a really weird card to be printed. It's 2 and white. It's a 1/2. When it enters, you search your library for an enchantment card and you put it on top of your library, or maybe it's an aura card. It's an aura card. You reveal it and put it on top of your library. That's a really weird card, and I don't think it's very good. I could definitely be wrong. Tutor effects are very powerful, which is probably why they printed it at 3 mana. It's 3 mana, 1/2. You really need to listen. It tutors for an aura and puts it on top. So it's like the original tutors, demonic tutor, not demonic tutor.
Greatheart. No.
Was it demonic tutor?
No, I'm talking about another creature.
Anyway, things like worldly tutor,
Enlightened tutor.
They just tutored for a card, and they would card meeting X conditions, and just put it on top of your library. Those were the original tutors, but they were also all 1 mana and instant speed and very good, broken, because you'd have a turn 1 tutor to draw your next. You'd pick what you would draw the following turn, which is very good. Now, this certainly doesn't do that. It's at sorcery speed. It's 3 mana and it's a 1/2, so it's really weak. So I don't really know what kind of decks this would fit in at 3 mana. In the Modern Bubbles deck, the only 3-drop they play in their main deck is Unflinching Courage, and that's normally as a 2-of, so this definitely wouldn't go in there. The Enchantress deck in Legacy doesn't really use its auras. It's using just normal value enchantments. And then the Standard Enchantments deck has its 3-drop is Witch Stalker, so it might play this as a 2-of, but probably not, just because at 3 mana, it's not very good. At 2 mana, this card would definitely be extremely powerful and would probably see play in some older formats, especially in like EDH. Even though it only tutors for auras, it still would be a 2 mana 1/2. That gets extreme value. So that's a very neat card, but I'm not sure how good it is. I could definitely be proven wrong. That does not seem out of place for me, as I'm proven wrong a lot.
Because you're bad at this.
I'm really bad at this game. I don't even know why I play. I just lose all the time. No, I'm kidding, guys. I win at least 50% of the time. I don't really pay attention. Uh-oh. Cersei Games is live. Uh-oh.
What do you do?
Invasive Species.
No offense to Star City.
This is no, it's cool. I'll watch them later when we're done. It's a 3 mana 3/3. When it enters, you return another permanent you control to its owner's hand.
What one? 2 mana 3/3.
It's 2 and a green, 3/3.
Okay, 3 mana 3.
So that's a very solid limited card. It's 3 mana 3/3. So you pass your vanilla test. If you have things that say enter the battlefield, do something, you're getting a lot of value. If you have a Phyrexian Revoker, you named a card, that card's now dead. You get to play this, bounce your Phyrexian Revoker, and replay it naming something else. If in limited that comes up. I'm not entirely sure what else that would affect. There are certainly some very good value creatures in Standard. The only question is, like, it wouldn't affect the souls because they're not actually Titans. So that's very neat. I don't think it'll find a home in Standard, but definitely a very good limited card, as it's just a passes a vanilla test with flying colors, and can bounce something that is pretty irrelevant. Can even bounce a land if you don't need to get higher than 3 mana. Return to the ranks. White X Convoke. I don't think we covered this one.
White X Convoke.
It has Convoke. Return X target creature cards with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's a very powerful ability. Maybe a deck like White Weenie could play this in Creature Mirrors when you're just kind of at a board stall. You attack in with a bunch of guys, you let a bunch of guys die, you cast this, and you get them back. So that'd be very good. Your opponent would think they got a very good, like, switch with the board. You lost a bunch of guys, they get to keep a few. It just seems like a really bad attack. And even if they just say, okay, no block because they're scared of this card, you get in for damage, which is also very good. Against control decks, it might be relevant if it resolves getting all your creatures back. If this was instant speed, I think this card would be pretty insane. Being at sorcery speed, it's still fine, and it could see home as like 1 of or 2 of in the sideboards of like White Weenie or the basically White Weenie deck with Boros Charm. It might find homes in there. And I'm just going to kind of look at some of the rare reprints. Hoarding Dragon's weird. It's a pretty decent card. It's a 5 mana 4/4 flying dragon. So that's definitely something to draft because it's a 4/4 flyer. But when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, exile it, then shuffle your library. When Hoarding Dragon is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may put the exiled card into its owner's hand. So that's it's certainly very good. It's just a 5 mana 4/4 flying dragon. And it's a May ability, so you don't have to exile artifact from your library if you don't want to. If you really just think you don't want to draw that card,
Oh god,
this is weird. If you think you just don't want to draw that card, then you're fine just going and exiling it, and if they kill your dragon, you get a card out of it. So it's very, very good and limited. Might see constructed play once again if there's some kind of weird artifact deck, and you need to tutor for one of your artifacts, and you have a way to kill. Even if your opponent doesn't kill the dragon, you have a way to do it. Could be very relevant. If this said leave the battlefield, I think this card could definitely be abused. But being enters, or no one's put into a graveyard, definitely not as much. Hornet Queen is being reprinted. This is 4 and triple green for a 2/2 flying death touch, which you probably think is very bad. It's a 7 mana 2/2 flying death touch. But when it enters the battlefield, you get 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch on the battlefield. So it's 7 mana for 6 flying power.
3 green symbols.
3 green symbols, so it adds to your devotion count. If that's maybe the mono green devotion deck would want this.
Like that's the only real deck that stays together out of the devotion.
It just destroys Stormbreath Dragon. It makes that card look terrible. It's 7 mana for 6 flying death touch power on 5 different bodies. So that's 5 different bodies. I like the card a lot. No one's going to want to block a Hornet Queen either, because they're like, it's only 2 damage.
Hornet Queen's a 2/2?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why you get 4 1/1 insects. So, I like this card a lot. I don't know if it has any home in Standard, being at 7 mana. I've definitely seen this card do some work in things like Cube and EDH, though. Being an end of the battlefield ability, it could get kind of silly. Sometimes, maybe if we get some kind of Restoration Angel effect that's like a Conjurer's Closet card. Conjurer's Closet was a card that impacted Standard a little bit while it was in Standard. People played it in their casual decks and their F&M decks. If that was reprinted, I think it definitely go alongside this Hornet Queen. And then there's a bunch of cards. I don't know if they're actually getting reprinted, but they're on the spoiler, so I'm going to read them off. Raise the Alarm. 1 in white instant. You get 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play, which could be very good. It looks like there's a bunch of things that just make soldiers, so that weird 6 mana artifact gives creatures you control +2/+2 of the chosen type. Like, this would be good in deck with that. It has Convoke. Raise the Alarm also being an instant allows you to play at the end of an opponent's turn, untap, and have access to 2 more mana for your Convoke spells, so it just kind of surprises them. Wall of Mulch, I think I already talked about that, but Darksteel Citadel, Disruptive Blast, I've mentioned those. Darksteel Citadel is just an indestructible artifact land, so maybe we're gonna get something that really cares about artifact counts, because it looks like we, like just Shrapnel Blast, which cares if you sacrifice an artifact, Darksteel Citadel, Ornithopter, the thing that gives your artifact spells Convoke. Just some things that kind of indicate there might be some very powerful artifact counting cards that come into play, but we don't know yet. Devouring Light, I don't think we talked about that. 1 white, Convoke,
Oh, yeah.
exile target attacking button creature. That's a really good card. Even in constructed, that card's still perfectly fine, because it's the worst case scenario. You could exile an attacking blocking creature for 3 mana. Being able to exile any creature that's attacking or blocking for 3 mana is very good, because it says exile, so it gets around things that die, things that generate things like Lotless Troll, Experiment 1 if those are relevant, and it can cost less mana. I know those rotate. 3 months will be standard together. They can cost even less than 3 mana. Being at 3 mana in something like White Weenie, where they can't really attack all the time, maybe they'll attack with 1 or 2 creatures. This could be a free removal spell. It would cost 0 mana. You just have to tap some guys, so that'd be very good in a deck like that. I don't think there are any more super interesting ones, other than this is a really bad card. It's 4 black enchant land, and it's an aura for land. Enchanted Land has tap. Target player loses 3 life.
I might play it.
I guess the Esper deck could play this as a win condition, or the blue-white Elixir deck if it adds black.
Gosh,
If you have your Nephalia Drowned guides, this is a much worse Nephalia Drowned. They can detention Spirit. Turn the Frog's back. It's literally turn, except it becomes a 1/1 instead of 0/1.
The 1/1 frog.
Yep. Here's Wall of Essence was interesting. It's 1 white. It's a 0/4 wall. For each combat damage dealt to it, you gain a life. That's interesting. Mask Calcify's back. 5 double white, destroy all non-white creatures. I don't think that's really going to impact standard. Johnny's Pridemate. I'm excited for that card. It's 1 white, 2/2. Whenever you gain life, it gets a 1/1 counter. It doesn't really care how much life. If you gain any amount of life, it gets a counter. Archangel Thune's going to be in standard. If you draft the staffs with this card, it gets really good. Just things that randomly gain life. If you get like 4 of these and there's a Soul Mender, you take that Soul Mender immediately. I don't know if that's in this core set. Because then it becomes tap, grow your Johnny Pridemate. That gets really good. Just some other random commons, uncommons. Howdy. Everything. Hey guys, and there's one final card that I want to touch on from the spoilers up to when we're recording this. It's Terra Stomper. It's 3 hybrid green for an 8/8. Is this trample? I think it's trample. It's uncounterable.
Yeah. An
8/8 trample, uncounterable. It seems very good alongside Mystical Hydra against control deck.
Again, triple green in the mana symbols.
Yeah. Maybe like some weird mono green devotion deck's gonna come out and just ram into these giant fatties that are really good against control decks. I don't know. Maybe.
What set was Elvish Mystic in?
Elvish Mystic's reprinted.
It's being reprinted?
Yep. We're gonna have Elvish Mystic alongside Voyaging Satyr, alongside Sylvan Carrier.
Found the address.
Yep. So maybe, guys, there will be some awesome mono green deck that's not the mono green devotion.
It's the only real devotion deck that stays around. Like mono blue is losing a lot of the cards from, like unless they reprint Tiebinder Mage
and Cloudfin Raptor and Frostburn Weird.
Yeah, like they're losing a lot of the good double blue symbols, and Nightvale Spectre.
And Nightvale Spectre.
And then like mono black is losing a bunch of stuff. Like I know World Connections is a big deal.
Green Zombie. Nightvale Spectre. Anyway, guys,
A lot of.
it's kind of the last of the spoilers. So, anything else you want to touch on before we're done? That's a no. So, guys, hope you enjoyed our terrible commentary. Any terrible jokes we made is normal. And our pure hatred of seethingness that you can obviously feel through the radio.
Of what?
You hate me, right? And I hate you. Pure sea of hatred and seething.
Your point is?
Proof. On record. Now you all know he hates me, guys. You know what I have to deal with.
I've actually killed him.
What?
You're a ghost.
What?
I see dead people.
Okay. So, guys, if you have any comments,
I'll derail this again.
don't be afraid. Either comment here,
Be afraid. Just be very afraid.
tweet at us at PureSoulsBlog. or email us, piercelsblog@yahoo.com.
You say us like we're a team.
I'm a ghost. I don't have any teams. I'm on my own here.
Good job.
You can find my articles over Constructed Decks, mtgbrodeals.com, my older works at piercelsblog.wordpress.com, our YouTube videos, where we actually have them. This is our YouTube podcast, as we like to call it. We have plenty of YouTube videos. We're going to try to do these every time there's a new set coming out and there's spoilers.
Ow.
Vintage Masters, we're not... Things like Vintage Masters that are solely online sets and for older formats like that mainly Vintage. And Legacy, we're not really going to go over those because, well, they're only online, and we don't play Magic Online.
Much.
And those are both formats that neither of us are playing because we don't have the money to afford to play Vintage or Legacy right now. Sadly.
I don't want to play either of those formats.
Lands are expensive. Very expensive.
Oh, God.
Dragon. Anyway, guys, hope you guys have a great day.
You, Dragon.
We hope to see you next time.
And you, Josh.
Bye, guys.
And